Hey guys, welcome back to Williamson Ridge Outdoors. We've got a little project today. Not so much firewooding or anything like that, but we're going to be working on the car. And pretty much, we'd like to do as much vehicle work and stuff as we can ourselves, just to try to save a little money, not pay the mechanic. So simple stuff like this. We're doing the brakes and rotors today on my wife's 2014 Toyota Camry, and I'm going to run through that. Who knows, maybe this video will help somebody out. So pretty much first thing we got to do, of course, is take off the wheel and tire, and we're using our DeWalt impact for that. So one thing too I want to point out, I'm actually sitting on a little bit of a hill, so you always want to make sure that you set your parking brake and chalk your wheels in the back, because on a front wheel drive your park mechanisms works off your front tires. So if you jack it up and you're on a hill or any kind of an incline, it's going to roll on you because this is where it's locked up at. So make sure you set your parking brake, which is on the rear tires, and put a chalk behind the wheels to make sure that it doesn't roll off on you. Huh. Alright, there's one of them.
That was pretty simple.
I am shocked
Why's that?
that it comes that loose that easy.
Maybe it's all the bolts are loose.
So pretty much we've got two bolts that holds the caliper on, and they're kind of back here in the back. So here's the front of your rotor. The bolts that hold this caliper on are right back here in the very back. There's one at the top, and there's one right down here at the bottom. Kind of hard to get in here, but you get the idea. There's only two that hold this whole caliper unit on, so once you pull that off, then your rotor is ready to come off. Pretty simple process. Alright, so we got the bolts out of our caliper, and what we're going to do, I've got a zip tie, and you don't want to pull your caliper off and leave it hanging on your brake line. So, because it's going to damage your brake line. You don't want to do that. So you zip tie this thing up to your springs up here on your strut, and you're good to go that way. So we're a little bit hung up on something. Oh, there it goes. So we want to try to leave the brake line, and we don't want to twist it around or anything, so we're going to leave that in as much of the same position as possible. And we're going to take our zip tie, just run it right up through here. This thing up, and let it hang on that so it's not hanging on your brake line. And if you want to, you could bring this up higher and get it out of your way a little bit farther, but I think we're probably okay where we're at. So you can get a hammer or something, just peck it from the back side. These are not going to be turned or reused or anything. We're actually replacing the complete thing, so it's not going to hurt to smack it with a hammer, so we're going to do that. Thing too that I like to try to do is put anti-seize between the new rotor and the hub, because that's where this thing sticks together. I don't know if you're supposed to do that or not, but I've always done it, and it always seems to work good for me. So I always try to use this, and this is the high temperature kind too, so it's not supposed to burn off. It's good for like up to 1800 degrees. So we're gonna put just a little bit on there, keep it from sticking, and that way later on we won't necessarily have to beat the rotors back off if we ever have to work on them again or whatever. So I've got the drilled and slotted rotors, and these are directional, so you want to make sure that you put the correct one on the correct side. So they are labeled new front driver side. That's where we're at right now. So the slots in these are directional, so the rotation helps to clean out the brake dust and all that kind of stuff. So if you get a drilled and slotted rotor and not just a standard flat rotor, then you want to make sure that you do make sure that you get the direction correct on these. So I'm going to put the caliper back on to kind of hold the rotor in place, and then while we're at it, I'm going to go ahead and change the brake pads. Now, you know, you may say, why wouldn't you change the brake pads before you put the caliper back on? But they're made to change the pads without having to take the caliper off. So the only reason that we took the caliper off is to get the rotor off. So we're going to put the caliper back on. We're going to put a little bit of anti-seize on those bolts when we put them back in. And then we're going to go ahead and put new pads on here to complement the new rotors. We've got the caliper back on. We've got to take the bolts out that holds the brake pads in, which it's kind of, the caliper's in two pieces. So you've got the part that your brake pads actually are in, and it's meant to where your actual caliper or your caliper bracket stays on, and you can change your brakes without taking all this stuff off. So once again, you've only got two bolts to take out to release this section with the brake pads in it. And again, you may see me talking on the film and it might not match up with my voice because I may end up having to do a voiceover because it is extremely windy again today. So we're just trying to work with what we got. So I also want to mention, I've got a helper today, and he's sitting back behind the camera right now, just trying to make sure that the shot's in focus and all that kind of stuff. So we may introduce you to him here in a little bit, but he's helping out today. His name's Lyle, and so he's making sure all these shots come through for you today. So these pads actually should just slip out of here. There's one. And the one in the back just slides right out. Now, so we've also got these little clips in here. They're kind of dirty. You can't hardly see them right now, but we're going to change these out too because we have all new clips to put in here. These things should just pop out too. next thing we've got is we've got to squeeze our caliper and get this thing in the open position, because our new pads are a lot thicker than what our old pads were. So we've got to squeeze this thing back to get it all the way open to be able to fit over top of our new pads. So one thing that you got to do is you want to loosen the cap on your brake fluid up here at your master cylinder, because as you're squeezing that, it's going to be pushing that fluid back into your master cylinder, and you don't want to be blowing the cap off or anything like that. That way all this excess that's in here will just fill back up into your reservoir. But the way that we're going to open this up is I'm going to put one of the old pads in here, and I'm going to take a C-clamp and just squeeze that back together. So now we just put our caliper back on and put it over our new brakes, and then we go to the other side and do it. Thank you, helper. Helper Lyle reminded me that I didn't have my springs on my brake pads, so we got to have those on there for sure. So another thing too I want to point out, when you're putting your wheels back on, I'm using the Impact, and this thing has 350 foot-pounds of torque, and you do not want to put your lug nuts on at 350 pounds. So I've got a torque wrench, and Toyota specification says I think 76 foot-pounds, but this one's 80 foot-pounds. So that will not let this Impact go any higher than 80 foot-pounds of torque. So don't have to worry about the lug nuts getting on too tight, getting them stuck on, or getting them stripped out. Or 350 foot-pounds just would not be good. So make sure you check your vehicle, whatever you're doing it on, and make sure you're torquing these lug nuts on to spec. And then after you drive it for a little bit, make sure you re-torque them to make sure that they're not working their way loose or anything. So Alright, so we got the brakes and rotors changed on our car, and now these pads and rotors require a break-in period. So what you've got to do is be driving at 40 miles an hour and hit your brakes real hard down to 10 miles an hour. And you're supposed to do that 5 times in a row and really, you know, get on them pretty hard, because you're supposed to heat those rotors up really hot. And then you're supposed to do 5 moderate decelerations, so from 35 miles an hour down to 5. And after you do those 5, then you pretty much drive around slowly, 10, 20 miles an hour, something like that, or even up 35, for about 5 minutes or so, to let the rotors and brakes cool back down and the air flowing through them cool them back down. So it's pretty important you go through this break-in period, because it, according to the manufacturer, they have, I guess the pads are like a carbon fiber and ceramic, so it puts it through the seating process. And it also states that after you do the first 5, when your brakes are the hottest, that you want to make sure that you don't stop and hold your brakes at a standstill after heating them up that much, because it says it actually will make indentions in the brake rotors. So definitely don't want that. So once you start the process, you do the 5 times 40 to 10, 5 times 35 to 5, and then drive around for 5 minutes and cool them down. So you want to try to make sure that you're in a place where you can do that without traffic, where you don't have to worry about people stopping in front of you or stopping at a traffic light or whatever. So very important you go through the break-in cycle correctly. So anyways, we're going to go do that. That pretty much sums it up for this video. I hope somebody finds this helpful. I know it's not, I'm not a professional mechanic or anything like that. I just do stuff around the house all the time. You know, whether it's farm work, machinery work, I don't know. We just try to do a lot of stuff around here ourselves without having to hire it done. So, and it's just part of it. You know, owning property and just taking care of things, doing the maintenance. I like to do the maintenance on my 4-wheelers, tractors, cars, as much as I can until it gets to a certain point, because, you know, like I say, I'm not a mechanic, but the things like changing brakes or normal maintenance, we like to do that ourselves. So anyways, thanks for going along today, and make sure you click that like button, subscribe. When you do, make sure you click the little bell icon beside of it so you get notifications whenever I upload new videos. Thanks for watching.